I have to start after this great talk by Vittorio. I have to start. I'm not a philosopher, so what I would do is sort of maybe it's poor man philosophy. I'm an economist, so I will start with an example. Actually, many of the things I will say resonates with what Vittorio is saying, but I want to start from the bottom up rather than from the top down. So I start with an example from my own school of sort of why sometimes market fails and how sort of economists are completely incompetent at dealing with that. So in Chicago, that Chicago Business School is sort of very loyal to its sort of market-friendly attitude. We have a bidding process for students. So students don't just register in courses, but they have points, and they bid for the courses they desire the most. And then sort of there's a market clearing system, there's a trading, all this to allocate professors and students, because we do believe that markets work very well. And I think they work well in general. Sometimes there are some sort of loopholes. So now we fix it, but a few years back, this bidding process had some loopholes. And in particular, second-year students who were arriving on campus a little bit earlier than first-year students could bid for first-year courses they didn't want and then trade them and make a surplus. And when sort of we found out that this was a widespread phenomenon, there was a debate among sort of faculty what to do with it, because some people said this is unacceptable. Others said, they don't violate any rule. And others even said, oh, we should sort of reward them, because after all, this is what arbitrage is about. We are training sort of financial economists, and they have to sort of find in the most aggressive way any loophole possible and trying to exploit it. And in this way, they're going to do well in life. So I think that this very simple example illustrates a bit the, if you want, conundrum that we have, that we do believe in sort of, at least from a methodological point of view, that to use Vittorio's sort of argument that private advisors are good for the system, or in economics terms, sort of what Adam Smith was saying is that the individual egoism leads to a good social outcome overall. So we do believe that. We are taking that, I think, as a methodological assumption for what we do, which I think makes our theories quite robust. I think we have gone a bit too far in believing it in every possible sort of step of the way. And in particular, we have kind of ignored that it is important in the development of economic institutions, of capitalism, etc., that there is a bit of not full pursuit of greed. And in particular, I will point out to three things. Number one, we don't expect, at least in the United States and in most developed countries, and now we can debate whether Italy is a developed country in this respect, but in most developed countries, we don't expect people to cheat at every corner. In the sense, in a normal everyday transaction, we're not afraid that they will cheat you at every opportunity they have. And the second is we expect people to exhibit a minimum level of cooperation. After all, democracy is based on people going to vote, and short of vote selling, which is relatively rare, there is no economic interest to vote. The probability that your vote makes a difference is basically zero, and you pay a cost to just go and vote, so that doesn't make any sense from an economic point of view. So if we push to the limit our sort of rational self-interest argument, there is no voting, there is no information. Why do I get informed about who to vote for, even if vote now with the internet might be almost free? Then I do pay a cost in getting informed, I don't get a return. Why do I do it? So we expect this. And the third element, which I think is important, is that people are somewhat subject to social pressure. And again, I think that economics laws tend to apply when we have large money at stake. If there was sort of $1 million here sitting on the floor. I don't know what I would do if I had the opportunity to steal it. I think that most people probably, if they can get away, would do it. But most people will not steal even if they get away with for like very small amount and so on and so forth. So I think that in the day-to-day transactions, as Vittorio was saying, there is that element of trust, which is fundamental in making a system work well. And most of us economists are completely ignorant of what Vittorio is saying. Is sort of, if you start thinking of it, it's pretty obvious, and now there are more and more people that do research and documents how important this is for the economic system. But by and large, the research in economics, and even more so the teaching of economics, is completely oblivious of what Vittorio said. And why this is very important is because even us in Chicago, we think that markets work most of the time. We do believe that markets don't always work. And one way in which we like to frame this is the theory of so-called missing markets. So the way you interpret of why there is a market failure is because there is one market missing. So why we have pollution is because we don't have the right to pollute that are auctioned off. And if you were to sort of have to buy a right to pollute the environment with your car, people would be more careful in how much they drive, and the market would be restored. So I think that this idea of missing market is useful in sort of explaining where market fails, and also many times how to fix the sort of failure of markets. In this particular case, the creation of a market for the right to pollute is a relatively viable alternative. But let me make another example, which I think is quite relevant nowadays, which is imagine that at some point there is a fire started in this room. The rational behavior, according to what we economists teach, is to rush to the door as fast as possible. And we know that this is not a socially optimal behavior because I don't know how good those doors are, but if we jump over each other, there is a chance that we sort of make more difficult to evacuate and more people die as a result. And what is the missing market? The missing market is, of course, you could run an auction to say who has the right to go to the door first, and people will have a clearing price, etc. As you can see, is not very realistic. While you can think about a market for pollution, I think the market for going out in an orderly fashion, well, by the time you sort of clear that market, most people are dead. So it's not really viable. However, we do have a thing which is called a social norm. And it's people who step out of their way, step out of line, they tend to be sort of sanctioned by people around. And in some situation, if you don't behave to these social norms, you are sort of pointed out as a bad person, and you have some social consequences of this norm. And now social norms actually tend to work in some situations relatively well, especially in certain attitudes, certain behaviors. So one thing that I would like to point out is that it took only 15 years from the time the Surgeon General announced that smoking was bad, not just for yourself, but for others, to the point that today, sort of trying to smoke in somebody else's house without asking for permission, actually, most of the time people don't even ask for permission, they ask where they can go in the balcony to smoke. So in 15 years, we changed dramatically the social norm vis-a-vis smoking. Why? Because there was a very good understanding of how smoking was harmful to others. And being a Chicago economist, I particularly like social norms because the alternative to social norms is regulation. And regulation tend to be intrinsically captured by the people who have an interest in capturing this. So the same reason why markets don't work very well is the reason that Vittorio was saying the political process doesn't work very well. And if we come to do regulation about banking, you know, even I, who have sort of a public interest in that and a private interest in that because I teach this stuff, at some point I give up in following the details of financial regulation. If you have a law that is 2,400 pages, that mandates 67 studies, that creates more regulation, I challenge anybody to have read all that stuff, except if you are very heavily paid to do that and you have a very strong interest. This is the lobbying that sort of Vittorio was talking about. And I think that the regulatory process by construction is biased in favor of the people who are regulated. The beautiful thing about social norms is that they don't depend on the legislative process and almost by design cannot be captured. Why? Because the enforcement is delegated to the people. Is the most democratic form of legislation, if you want, because it's only enforced when you have a vast majority of people believing in that rule. And so I do believe that social norms should play an important role in mitigating these externalities that Vittorio is talking about. But now, of course, the problem is sort of who creates the social norms. In my view, there are some institutions that have an interest in creating those norms, and this should be business schools. Why? Because our business model is based on the success of capitalism in the long term. And while, as the title of one of my books suggests, I do believe that capitalists often don't have the same interests of capitalists at large. You know, every entrepreneur wants free markets when he gets in, but wants sort of non-free markets when he's in. While sort of we as a business school, as people who have an interest of capitalism at heart, we want those free markets to continue to remain free, both before and after a person enters. So we, I think, have an important role in shaping those norms. And I have to say, this is sort of very sad, but we fail completely in that dimension. We fail because we pretend to be social scientists. We pretend to be scientists when we are social scientists. And what Vittorio was saying was absolutely right. In a sense, if you teach sort of a lecture in physics about the behavior of the atom, you don't change the behavior of atoms. When you teach people sort of the behavior of business, you do change their business behaviors. And there is plenty of evidence that the teaching of economics make people more selfish, less sort of interested in that minimum amount of civicness and trust that is the fabric of our society. And we do it, again, I say in a very hypocritical way, because if I teach game theory, what I'm going to tell you is rushing to the door is the rational response. And I pretend I'm not giving you any value. I'm just describing a mathematical model where I have sort of an objective function and I assume people behave in a certain way, and that is the rational response. However, when I teach this to people, I think that what is the opposite of rational is irrational. So what is the implicit norm that we're giving is that waiting in line is an irrational thing to do. And if there is not a moral connotation to it, it's pretty close. And actually, is probably the most dangerous form of morality is the one that you don't openly sort of state it. You're trying to sneak it in so that most people don't understand that there is, but eventually they sort of are affected by that. And so I think that as business school, we should discuss in class what are behavior that are even antisocial. And I'm not saying any sort of religious component to that. I leave that to you guys who have a comparative advantage in that. But I think that even remaining sort of a very narrow-minded economist, I can say that sort of rushing to the door is not beneficial to this group at large. And so having a social norm that rushing to the door is bad and trying to enforce it, I think is beneficial to society. And as an economist, I should teach that, the rational individual response is this. This is not the collective efficient response. And we should factor in that people have some norms, so if you deviate from those norms, will be punished and will be bad for you over the long term. I think that that's sort of one of the primary things we should do. And the same is true regarding what Vittorio is saying is lobbying. There is a very famous paper, it's actually a very short one, but it's a brilliant idea, of Gordon Tullock in 1972 that came up with this crazy thing that there is too little money in politics. And this is, of course, a big shocking statement because now in 1972 the money was much less, but if you do the calculation today, the answer is true. From an economic point of view, there is too little money in politics. Why? Make the calculation. It takes like the entire amount of the electoral campaign, etc., is $2 billion. If with $2 billion you buy the president and the Congress, you get to manage how many trillions of dollars of wealth. If you sort of put it from an economic point of view, investing that money and having Congress in your pockets and ruling in your favor is economically optimal. And unfortunately, this little known sort of piece by Gordon Tullock turns out to be so true that firms are figuring that out. And while maybe for ideological reasons, etc., lobbying was more limited in the past, in the last few years have become a very efficient business and have become the most profitable way in which companies invest their money. There is no better way to invest their money than lobbying, as is the highest return activity. Let me give you an example. So of Tyco, the very famous Tyco that was involved in a bunch of fraud, also reincorporated into the Bermuda, and so was exempted from the US corporate tax. And a Republican senator, so we're not talking about sort of a radical extremist, a Republican senator made a proposal to actually subject Tyco, as other sort of US companies that on purpose reincorporated in Bermuda to elude US taxes, to subject those companies to US taxes. Tyco went to Jack Abramoff. We know that because Jack Abramoff, as you know, ended up in jail and wrote a book. Since his sort of his lobbying career is finished, he decided to sort of tell the story the way it is. So the Tyco said, I need your A-level team. This is really a sort of a serious matter because Tyco was risking $4 billion in taxes. And so they said, I need your A-level team here at work. So for the modic price of $150,000 a month, Jack Abramoff deployed the A-level team for Tyco. And the purpose of this A-level team was twofold. On the one hand, creating fake grassroots organizations. Fake grassroots organizations. Now there is a term for this, it's called astroturfing. Those fake grassroots organizations will sort of try to make very effective the point that there were too much taxes and was unfair to tax sort of Tyco and so on and so forth. At the same time as we're creating this pressure, they are also giving plenty to the campaign of this Republican senator. So they were playing both the good cop and the bad cop at the same time. The result is that in 1 year, this piece of legislation has been forgotten. For the modic price of $4 million, Tyco saved $4 billion. Now, there is no activity, not even illegal activity, even if you sort of deal in cocaine, I don't think the return is that big, okay? So in front of this return, I think that lobbying is the most profitable activities. And it's not a surprise that now 7 of the 10 largest counties, wealthiest counties in the United States are around Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C., as you know, produces nothing except norms, okay? So the fact that 7 of the 10 largest counties are there suggests that lobbying has become the most sort of profitable activity in the United States. And we, as economists and business school, what we do is basically teach how to lobby better. There is no sort of sanctioning whatever form. And the thing that really hurts me is we kick out our students who cheat in exams, and rightly so. We don't kick out our businessmen who cheat in various ways. Just, there is a code of honor that they have to sign in terms of not cheating at exams. There is no code of honor of they should behave in business. You probably have followed the conviction of J. Jayaratne, the sort of hedge fund manager that was convicted at, I think, 15 years for insider trading. What is sort of scary is 3 of his closest associates and accomplices were his friends at business school. So the fact that there is this sort of camaraderie and you share private information, and as far as I know, that business school at Fordham is not mine, but that business school has not expelled these people from the Alumni Association, does not make a big deal. One of the big value of being a business school is to have a network of alumni. We should impose some social norms in the network of alumni and say, if you make money in ways that we don't consider particularly sort of good, you don't belong to this network. And not only sort of the illegal activities, because of course insider trading is illegal, but also some activities that are borderline, actually not borderline, they are exploitative. And there is one sort of famous businessman that actually, unfortunately, has a PhD from MIT, that ended up running a gambling concern. And I am sort of very relaxed about running a gambling concern, except the fact that his claim to fame is that he introduced serious marketing into gambling. And serious marketing means that they keep track of people. And there is a quote of an interview he released that they basically want to see those traits that, when I read it, are the trait of an addictive gambler. And they do targeted offers to go and spend more money in the casinos for people who are basically addicted gamblers. And I think this is indecent. And it's just having, making money out of private vices is okay, but within limits. And we have no way to take a stand on these things. And my concern is exactly the same concern as Vittorio. If we don't take a stand, the revolt against capitalism and against a system that has produced so much wealth, it will be and is inevitable. I always sort of tell people the story about my kids when they were younger, and they were trying to play Monopoly. And my son, who was a bit older, knew the rules better than my daughter. And so shortly after they started, they would start sort of fighting, and then my daughter will leave the game crying, saying that my son was cheating. And with the rules in his hands, he would say, I'm not cheating, but he was like selectively enforcing the rules. And I think that's a pretty good metaphor of our economic system. If people sort of either cheat or selectively enforce the rule, if the game is unfair, people want to walk away from it, like my daughter did. And I think that a lot of the revolt that we see today from Occupy Wall Street and even in some form of the Tea Party are revolt against a system that people start to see more and more unfair. So you don't need to be a moral philosopher to understand that this is a real problem we need to address. Thank you.